February 22nd, 2018. This video is called Obama Portrait, Ruse toxicodendron poison tree, action intended to deceive Fukushima. Now, this is the presidential portrait that is going to go into his library that people have been talking about lately, and I have my own interpretation of the portrait, what I think it should be. Now, this is the official portrait using flowers to tell his story, and they're talking about this chrysanthemum for natural insecticides and this Hawaiian peacock. There is this flower from Mozambique, African blue lily. Well, I'm going to show you my interpretation of that portrait, the one it should have been. But first off, I wanted to show you a few others that I did. To color the news, the press you control. So tell us what shade of black is your soul. So God will forgive, but he never forgets. To cover your sins, we pay with our dead. Fukushima burns hot like the sun. Fukushima has only begun. Now, it is clear that I remember President Bush had a hard time saying nuclear, but I think actually for Obama is called nuke-liar. How appropriate. Now, all the talk is about Trump colluding with Russia. How about Obama colluding with TEPCO? He was on a fission mission, and just like TEPCO lied, so did Obama, and covered up practically one of the largest industrial accidents in the world that you would be surprised it's affecting you and you don't even know it. And here is my portrait. I call it Barack Obama, Ruse toxicodendron. And in a nutshell, when I first looked at his portrait, I swear it looked like poison ivy. But that's what I did, is I used poison ivy to shroud him with the backdrop of the blown out reactor number 4, which if you look at it, you could see right through the reactor building. He's got the blood on his hands because that's exactly what he has for the cancers that are coming up in the population that he was supposed to protect. He has got the seal of the nuclear Illuminati because actually his interest was more to protect the nuclear industry than the citizens that he was elected for. And if you look closely, he drinks from the cup of the devil, because if what he done was not evil, I don't know what was or what can be. Ruse toxicodendron is the Latin genus and species for poison ivy. Ruse is an action intended to deceive someone, and that someone is us. Toxicodendron means poison tree. Now, this is bizarre. Barack Obama is going to have a library, but despite his fame as a community organizer and a serious scholar, the city of Chicago is discovering that Barack Obama's presidential library is neither a library nor does it seem to care much about what the community wants. Whatever the Barack Obama Presidential Center is or isn't going to be once complete, several months ago it was already revealed that it actually would not be a library, at least not the kind of library that fits the official description of an actual presidential library. The Obama Foundation, the organization planning and building the facility, announced that not only will the National Archives and Records Administration remain uninvolved in the place, but Obama has decided not to house his records, papers, and manuscripts there anyway. I kind of wish they would have been, because I would have loved to take a trip up there to fish through his archives to see what else we could find, since all these records on Fukushima a lot of stuff has been deleted. For example, the Hillary Clinton emails, some were brought back through the Freedom of Information Act, but who knows what was deleted. And also, I'll show you the redactions on the emails where we have no clue. If we want to know the truth of what happened to Fukushima in America with the fallout and the Rad Pack that Hillary Clinton signed with the food that is coming out of Japan to flow freely into our country without testing, we would be able to find the truth on these two characters. The Obama administration's failure to alert Americans to the danger of Fukushima radiation is motivated by corporate politics and the interests of the nuclear power industry. The March 11, 2011 earthquake off the northwest coast of Japan wrecked a complex of nuclear power plants, throwing 3 units into meltdown and exploding high-level radionuclides into the environment. That was the largest nuclear power plant in the world at the time. With the industry's reputation and billions of dollars in financial arrangements hanging in the fire, the president chose expediency, saying there's no threat to Americans. Now, what's significant is the timeline of what happened at Fukushima. The 11th is when the earthquake hit. Now, you got to remember these days, March 12th, it says that the emergency backup battery for reactor 3 runs out and the fuel rods are exposed. Steam is released into the air. March 13th, the situation at Unit 1 is declared a level 4 and there's core damage begins in Unit 3. On March 14th, a major explosion in the building of Reactor 3 damages the cooling system for Reactor 2, triggering a core damage in that unit. Now, eventually, it rose to a level 7, which is the highest on the scale. March 15th, an explosion severely damages Reactor 4. Another explosion takes place in Unit 3. Fire starts in Unit 4. Okay, remember, March 12th, fuel rods exposed. The 13th, the damage begins. If you look at his presidential timeline, on March 11th, he has a conference on bullying. March 11th is the earthquake. Notice that on March 19th is the next entry in here. Believe it or not, President Obama fled to the southern hemisphere because he knew the reports of the fallout was going to be coming to the United States after 4 days of drifting from Japan. Now, Obama tells the USA no danger from Fukushima and then flies to Brazil with GE and Westinghouse bosses. He left with his family on an unplanned trip to South America. Now, March 12th, 2011, he goes golfing. On March 12th. On March 12th, he goes golfing. That's the same day that the fuel rods are exposed. The NRC, the FDA, the EPA, President Obama, and Hillary Clinton denied Fukushima radiation plume hitting the United States. EPA turns off 99 out of 135 radiation monitors. The Fukushima plume covered up in BC, Canada. Those monitors that were keeping a sniffer for that radiation. The EPA nationwide blackout of real-time radiation monitoring, radiation censoring, no data available, and no one reporting on real radiation levels, including all 100 nuclear reactor plants, plus 100 labs that have very sensitive radiation detectors. The EPA censored, restricted, and or deleted the beta radiation readings right after Fukushima happened. No one was warned of high radiation readings, hot particles, or anything else. No one was told to take the potassium tablets, even though it would have saved lives and avoided 99% of the thyroid cancers that this will eventually cause. Now here is a Freedom of Information Act letter. While the NRC and the nuclear industry have been reassuring Americans that there is nothing to worry about, that we can do a better job dealing with the nuclear disaster like the one that just happened in Japan, it turns out privately the NRC senior and analysts are not so sure. Now here's a quick note on this email. Just one quick ad. Avoid discussing Japan in any detail. If pressed, please use the language from our press releases and refer people to this number. In the same email, I am by no means trying to represent or act in the place of the OPA, but in preparation for this science, technology, energy fair, I think that the previous do's and don'ts set out before by Beth, coupled with the advice indicated by surrounding the Japan crisis, would be great to remember and follow as we go and represent the agency this Friday. We can't expect to get a lot of questions this weekend on the Japan crisis, but I think if we follow the advice given to us, we can survive the fair, because the reporters are going to be asking a lot of questions. You should talk to Department of Energy and Nuclear Regulatory Commission. NRC has assured, and I quote the NRC, "You just aren't going to have any radiological material by the time it travels those large distances. Could present any risk to the American public." Just as you said, we are doing a lot to make sure we are in the most forward-leaning posture possible. Adding DOE and NRC to help you with this story, but can I ask why on earth the New York Times thinks it's a good idea to do a false scare story? Can we talk for a minute about the radiation plume? This is a false scare story that we're trying to do responsibly. It seems every agency is doing its part. NOAA, FAA, DOE, DOD. Please see the exchange of messages below. In fact, we have found the footage, but the video could have some impact on the public, so I think you should have a look before we pass it to the TV channel. Our webmaster is going to send it to you very soon. This is when they did an experiment on a lower head failure project. But basically, if you look at all this redaction. Wouldn't you love to know what's in that blacked out stuff? And here's some issues inside. They're talking about food contamination around Fukushima requires countermeasures, the safety of the nuclear power plants, and the reactors remain in precarious situation. The redactions go on and on and on. They talk about the impact of a dry pool in Unit 4. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the other emails, the FOIA emails that are going to prove that the White House was in direct consultation and they knew everything about Fukushima, what was happening, and it's direct evidence of Obama knowing what was going on and willfully choosing to deceive us. Now remember the timeline. This is very important. Remember, everything is exploding and blowing up on the 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th. Now it's very important. On the 17th, President Obama goes to the Rose Garden and tells America to not take precautionary measures because he will keep us informed, because we must know what he knows as president. Now, knowing what he knew, for him to go on the lawn there and on the 17th is the biggest bald-faced lie that has ever been told in American history.
They'll be calling you a radical, back to Fukushima and fainting goats, the epic denial. You know, look, the American populace heard it off the fucking cliff. Good sheep, good sheep, good sheep.
I know that many Americans are also worried about the potential risks to the United States. So I want to be very clear. We do not expect harmful levels of radiation to reach the United States, whether it's the West Coast, Hawaii, Alaska, or U.S. territories in the Pacific. Let me repeat that. We do not expect harmful levels of radiation to reach the West Coast, Hawaii, Alaska, or U.S. territories in the Pacific. That is the judgment of our Nuclear Regulatory Commission and many other experts. Furthermore, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and public health experts do not recommend that people in the United States take precautionary measures beyond staying informed. And going forward, we will continue to keep the American people fully updated, because I believe that you must know what I know as president.
You're a liar! Are you lying to me? Are you a liar? Are you lying to me? Are you a liar?
When does the lying stop? When does the lying stop? When does the lying stop?
All right, here are some more emails through the FOIA documents. This is from the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the Emergency Response Update as of March 18th. Now, this is a day after Obama gave that speech. Now, if you look over here, it says, please note that this information is official use only and is only being shared within the federal family. Now, the declassified documents were supposed to be declassified in the year 2031. Now, here is the status of Fukushima 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. If you look at every core is damaged. And the common spent fuel pool. Restoration of electrical power is in progress. Now over here, look what it states. On March 16th, that's the day before he gave his speech, NRC provided the White House with information on protective measures for NRC staff in Japan and information to provide advice for other workers in Japan. The U.S. State Department has approved voluntary authorized departure of family members. The State Department, that's what Hillary was in charge of. The U.S. Department of Energy and the United States Environmental Protective Agency are the federal communications on questions regarding possible domestic impacts of the events. This information is compiled from TEPCO press releases. They changed it from a level 4 to a level 5. They have the stat of all the reactors. and it states that 25% of the total fuel in Unit 2 was released in the air. 50% of the spent fuel from 3 was released in the air. And 100% of the total fuel was released in Unit 4 into the atmosphere. Small amounts of radioactive substances are found in the Tokyo tap water, although they say it's not at harmful levels, which do not pose a threat to human life. Results of the discussed 3/21 White House meeting. White House meeting. Continually to work with the DOA, NIT, ANRAC to refine estimates of radiological effects to the United States. Need to follow up with the liaison team to contact the EPA to follow up on their monitoring their efforts along the West United States coastline. This is a briefing for March 24th. Based on coordination of the DOS, they're waiting for White House clearance to share the modeling results with Japanese government through the ambassador. They're waiting for White House clearance. Oh, there you go, Ambassador Ross. NRC met with representatives from the National Emergency Management Association today regarding ongoing business. The state emergency directors uniformly expressed the desire for a federal official to serve as a focus for USG messaging on the potential health effects to United States and territories. This is on the 27th. The White House has requested a white paper on the safety of U.S. spent fuel storage, both wet and dry. Spent fuel storage safety paper has been transmitted to the White House staff. PMT responded to a White House question on the apparent discrepancy in the source term used by the NRC for a plausible Tokyo scenario. This is on the 28th. LT is working to contact NSS White House to participate in calls requested by U.S. PACOM regarding radiological conditions at the Fukushima Daiichi plants. The PMT evaluated information from TEPCO and the United States NISA regarding levels of plutonium sampled on site. So now we're dealing with like the most potent isotope in the universe. Request has been forwarded to the White House to gain alignment prior to moving forward. The The White House briefed the states regarding the event on 4/1/11. Other agencies participated in the briefing. The LT, the OPA, listened in on the call. There were no questions directed at the NRC. Ambassador to Japan requested a forward-looking pessimistic scenario calculation. The request was forwarded to the White House to gain alignment prior to moving forward. Briefing material for Chuck to use with Secretary of State Clinton has been provided. Don't think that Hillary Clinton didn't know what was going on. Over here, they revised the rating of Fukushima to level 7. That's on April 13th. TEPCO meeting. After a long discussion of the sampling results from Unit 4, the spent fuel pool, TEPCO concluded that the likelihood of damaged fuel in the pool was low. They're still in denial, even though it's been up in smoke for a while. NISA is developing criteria for allowing liquid and solid rad waste to be released into the municipal water system. Kirk at 3 on 4/16 advising against sharing a document that U.S. states and other international stakeholders have been denied. Ambassador Ruse provided Secretary Clinton with NRC quick look comments on the roadmap as of April 17th. The U.S. Department of Energy and the U.S. EPA are the federal communicators for questions regarding possible domestic impacts from the events in Japan and on domestic monitoring. The U.S. Embassy in Japan is preparing for a return shortly of U.S. citizens who voluntarily relocated from the Tokyo area and has issued a travel alert on the subject that can be found online. They're evacuating embassy people in Tokyo, but they left everybody to fend for themselves. As of April 22nd, there's a decision approved to suspend monitoring by Operations Center 24/7 over the weekend and resume watch standing on Monday. Japan reached back to PMT headquarters to raise awareness of the waste container and radioactive MOX. That's the uranium-plutonium mix. And last but not least, as we learned the New York Times article, we need to safeguard against leaks of OUO information. In conclusion, I like my portrait better because it reveals Obama in the true light. He is a poison tree. His actions were intended to deceive us, and he knows it, and we know it also.